just while we're waiting for the last few people to come along, at the end of tonight's proceedings we'll be drawing the raffle that's been kindly donated by Irene down here. So please see her for tickets. It's a wonderful basket worth over $280, of healthcare and beauty products. So thank you, Irene. And put your hands up if you want to get a ticket, and Irene will come around and see you. Also, huge thank you to so many of you who've reached out and donated for the fundraising, and we really do appreciate it, and we'll be drawing regularly so that the fundraising keeps coming in. So as always, just before we start, just to let you know, we are working under our COVID plan. So if there's any vulnerable people in the room tonight, please do not approach any of the committee members. We are required to maintain no contact. Also, we are recording the session and live streaming to members and other people who can't make it tonight, both here in Darwin, in Katherine, and in Alice Springs. So welcome to those who are tuning in via Facebook. Today has been a little bit of a difficult day. We had our first, our second hearing in court. Monday we were there, and again today. But today was the day where the judge was to hand down a decision whether to hear our case on an expedited basis prior to Christmas. Unfortunately for us, the judge has decided that it won't be heard this side of Christmas. So a bit of a blow, especially for all those workers who now either have to get the second jab or give up their employment and their livelihood, and also for all you business owners who are trying your best to support your staff through this really difficult period. It's another burden now on all the business owners. So despite that, we carry on. We are blessed to have an amazing legal team, and even though the decision today didn't go our way, there still was a lot that we learnt and which will help guide our arguments as we go forward. So the next step is we have a directions hearing next Wednesday, at which we will likely have a confirmed date in court, which we'll let everyone know how that goes next week as well. So a little bit of a legal update there. Tonight we are incredibly lucky and blessed to have a couple of guest speakers. So we'll introduce first Dr. Sam McMahon, who's the Senator for the Northern Territory, and also we're lucky to have Lee Phillips here coming up from Alice Springs, and they'll both just speak a little bit about their impressions on what's going on. Tonight, if you have questions, please submit them via Messenger, our Messenger account. So you can go on our Facebook page and hit the message button and type in your message. This mode of taking questions has been suggested on a couple of the last feedback forms. So we've taken that on board. So if you do have a question for tonight, don't wait right till the end. Type it up through the Facebook Messenger, and it'll come through to the ladies, and they'll be able to send that up to the table. So on that note, again, I'd like to welcome you all, and also welcome Dr. Sam McMahon to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. As Mario said, my name is Dr. Sam McMahon. Trust me, I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Okay. Can you hear it? Yeah.
But no, really, I mean, I am obviously representing the federal government, but I am also one of you. I'm a business owner. I own businesses in Katherine and Alice Springs. and my businesses have been affected by the mandate and also by the border restrictions. So I am speaking as a representative of government, but I'm also speaking as a business owner in the Territory, as one of you who's facing a lot of the same issues that you are. Now, I'll just state I am fully vaccinated and I do believe in vaccination. But that is my choice. That is my choice. I do not believe on enforcing that choice on to anyone else. So what have I been doing? Well, I've been lobbying the federal government. Scott Morrison has come out several times, particularly recently, and said we do not support mandates. Now, that's great, but that doesn't help you guys very much, because Michael Gunner goes, well, stuff you, I'm just going to do whatever I want and you can't stop me. Now, that is true to a certain extent, but there is a group of us, and a growing group of us within the coalition in Canberra. We have our own little group, and it is expanding, and we are bringing pressure to bear on the Prime Minister from the top down to work as hard as possible with the state premiers and chief ministers to walk them back from this edge of this cliff that they are rapidly jumping off. So we are bringing pressure from the inside. Some of you may know recently that I also crossed the floor to vote against the government. For Pauline Hanson's bill. Now, the bill was flawed legally. You know, it would never have got up, and it would never have been possible to enforce. But it was a symbol of the way those of us who cross the floor feel, and the way that we will keep fighting to find a way to turn back these mandates and these ridiculous border restrictions. Yeah. Now, I commend and I applaud all of you here and the leadership of this group for what you have done so far. You have taken legal action, and that's a fantastic step. I hope you are successful, but even if you're not, at least you're doing everything in your power to hold this government to account and to make them see sense and reason. So I commend you and I applaud you for taking that action. I commend you for your stance, and for your stance of being measured and reasonable. You know, Michael Gunner gets up there in his press conferences and he rants and raves and shouts like an absolute lunatic. Now, if you rant and rave and shout like lunatics back at him, everyone's shouting, nobody gets it. But he is being a shouting lunatic, and you are being the voice of sense and reason with measured arguments. And I urge you to continue that. Continue being the better people, the smarter people, the people with the better argument. I will be here to support you in any way I can. Please don't hesitate to contact me directly or my office. I will do whatever I have in my power to join you in rolling back this tyrant from these ridiculous, extreme, unreasonable measures that he is inflicting upon Territorians and the Territory business community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much, Senator, for those kind and encouraging words. And we also commend your leadership in standing up for what's right, for being one of the few voices of reason in our Parliament, and for having the courage to stand by your convictions. Thank you for the leadership, something that is severely lacking in this place at the moment. We are here for leadership, not dictatorship. And it's only when strong voices stand up together for what's right, like Senator McMahon said, with reasoned argument and with reasonable positions, that include everyone in our community and don't divide our community. So thank you again. I'd now like to introduce Leith Phillips. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen his video and his presence at a couple of the rallies in Alice Springs and here as well. And we're very lucky that to have Leith here with us tonight and to talk a little bit about his experience with what he's seen with these mandates and how it's affected himself and the police force as well. So, Leith, thank you for coming, and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much for welcoming me here and allowing me to come and speak with you. Not sure if you know too much about where I'm from, but I'm born in Katherine, youngest of 7. We were all born in Katherine, and that was in the days where a 5-hour trip to Darwin was going pretty fast. You wound through the hills around Adelaide, Pine Creek and all that sort of thing. Our families had a long association in Northern Australia. My father was the head of CSIRO and did a lot of work to bring in improved pasture and stuff up here. We've also had a long association with the Indigenous people. My grandparents started Maningrida, and also another community called One Arm Point north of Broome. So we've had a long association in this area. Now, as you're aware, I'm no longer a police officer. So I was in my 24th year with the Northern Territory Police. I got to a point where I could no longer be silent. And if you've never heard of a bloke called Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I suggest you go and research him. He was an amazing man of courage. He ended up being hung in the final stages of the Second World War for his stance against tyranny and what was going on in Germany. And one of his most famous quotes was, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil." And another one, which I really liked as well, was "Not to speak is to speak." So I could no longer reconcile what I was being asked to do and what I saw occurring within the Northern Territory Police. The Cho directives, I believe, are an abusive process. It's very clear in the directives, and I'll just read it. It says that a Cho directive relating to the immunisation of staff starts with the wording, "Consider it necessary, appropriate or desirable to take the action to alleviate the public health emergency." And if you have a look at section 48 of that Public and Environmental Health Act, it identifies that the declaration of a public health emergency is subject to there being an immediate serious public health risk, right? Which is so urgent, these are the words of the Act, that is so urgent to require the declaration, and that a state of disaster has not been declared, and it's not appropriate to declare a state of disaster under the Emergency Management Act. So it beggars belief, to coin a phrase from a QC in Alice Springs, it beggars belief that there is such an urgent requirement to have these emergency declarations going on and on and on. I questioned very early on, if this thing is so infectious, so contagious, why have we not seen field hospitals complementing our military field hospitals being established to complement our overrun hospitals in Alice Springs, Katherine, Tennant Creek, Darwin? Because I tell you what, if there was something like Ebola, I'm sure we'd have military field hospitals set up. So for me, you just look at it, I've been trying to get people to start thinking, using this part of your brain, which is your thinking part of your brain, and just ask the simple question, why? So that's all you have to start with. And you can do that with the person in line at the shopping centre, or when you go and buy fuel and you hear them talking, just say why. You know, if they're talking about this, because they probably are, seems like the only thing we talk about these days, you can just put that in and just say why. Why is this relevant? Why do they need to do this? And I think once we start getting people thinking, critically thinking, then we'll start to see the majority coming on board. And that's the problem. We've got about 30% which are totally bought into it, and you're never going to change their belief status. You've got 30% which are all of you mob, awake and aware, and you've got about 40% who we're fighting to wake up. Whichever side gets the majority there, they've won this. All right? So we've got to try and wake up the 40% and get them to start critically thinking, because part of the whole process, we didn't just get here overnight. Right? This has been something which has been going on for years, decades, but it really increased in the last 5 years or so, and we saw it with the cancel culture, people being cancelled for speaking against the so-called public narrative in a whole range of fields. Then it rolled into the BLM protests, and then it rolled into this. So the public, the general public, were conditioned to not question, because if you questioned, you were castigated and you were labelled as a bigot or a racist or whatever, even though you were asking very legitimate questions. And what we've seen is a slow descent. Actually, no, it's a very quick descent in the last 18 months. We've gone from rule of law to rule by law. Now, if you're not aware of what they mean, search it. Don't use Google. It will probably be cancelled out. So go to something like DuckDuckGo or whatever and see the difference between rule of law and rule by law. So rule of law essentially is where everyone is equal before the law, and there's no differentiation. Rule by law essentially is the rule is applied differently to different groups, and it is used as a tool of oppression, and that is what I believe we're seeing now. And it's basically a tool used in a totalitarian society. So we're here now not by accident, I don't believe, and it's a really dangerous place, and we need more people to start standing up and speaking out for true justice and freedom in this country, because it's not the Australia I grew up in the 1970s. So, just very briefly, someone asked me in Alice Springs, what is it that you actually want? It was a very good question, because we sort of, some people say, what do you want? We want to go back to what it was before COVID. Oh, heck no. Because that's what's got us into this mess in the first place. Yeah. Because we were too complacent. The Australians sitting back, and just the ambivalence of people is just staggering, that they would be quite happy to hand over their freedom. Freedom should never ever be returned to you. It should never be taken off you. It's not something that you get back for being a good boy. Yeah. So basically I sat down and thought, well, what do I want? Well, I want, what I think we all want is initially the revocation of the emergency declaration. Because once that emergency declaration's gone, all the Cho directives are gone, all right? They're finished. They're not law, they are rules being put in place. You'll probably correct me, but they're put in place for the purpose of the emergency declaration, and that's why originally emergency declarations could only be for 5 days. All right? And that's why you saw every 5 days it being advertised, it's been extended, and then late last year they changed the legislation to make them 90-day orders. Very convenient, and because the reason why they were 5-day orders was because the creators of the legislature realised that they were such, that the chief health officer could impose such draconian rules in situations of dire emergency, but they were only for 5 days. The Romans had it, and they had a person very similar. He was given 6 months where he could do whatever he liked, but it was for a very definite time period and not to be extended. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the Public Health and Emergency and Environmental Act be returned to the 5-day orders rather than 90-day orders. The power of the CHO to be severely curtailed, rather than one person, or perhaps Mr. Gunner and Mr. Chalker making the rules and the CHO stamping them. But and for no employer to be forced or to be able to discriminate on grounds of medical or vaccination status for an employee or a member of the public. You should not ever be asked to disclose your private medical data to enter a shop. Never, ever, never. So, I don't know where you stand on faith, but regardless of where you stand, it's your spirituality that no man can take from you. No one can take it from you, regardless of what law is imposed. And it's your freedom that no government should ever take from you as well. So, in times like this, it's your inner strength, it's the faith that you have in that you've developed over time that will hold you through all these hard times. For me, it's the Bible, and I read that. There's Psalm 91 is a great one. If you've never read the Bible, go and have a read of that. Look, that's pretty much it for me. You've got to look around the country, and when professional people are speaking out at the risk of losing their job, resigning, being stood down because they're taking a stance, well then you need to take note. You need to listen, because people don't just give up their career for nothing. Yeah. And I've given up 24 years. I was a bit burned out from what occurred at UNTB and the lack of leadership provided by Mr. Chalker. But just seeing what has been occurring within the police has just been heartbreaking. And I've had, since being locked out or kicked out of the Alice Springs police station, and the reason given was that they were concerned who I would speak with inside and what I might do on the computer. Well, I can talk to all of those same people at the front door. And since then I've had police officers from all over the Northern Territory ring me and say, "We've read your email, thank you NT Independent, wherever you are. They did a very good job of that article in bringing the truth out and reproducing my email to the Commissioner in full. But I've had many police officers from every station ring and say, "We've read your email and there's not one word in your email that we disagree with." However, they are all stuck in a situation of having to put food on the table. And no one should ever lose your basic human right to put food on the table and to work. That is a basic human right that Australia has signed up to. All right? And for some reason they've just thrown it out the window. What we thought was sacred 18 months ago has just been thrown out the window. So, it's and I still stand by my small page defence. So that's an in-house growth. So I think basically I'm here to give you a message of hope. There is hope. I believe we will come through this, but we need more people to stand up. We need more people doing what you're doing. Look at every one of you. You all have a circle or a network of people that you connect with who are somewhere on the spectrum of the mandate. Right? And we need you to, each of you, to be speaking to all of your network people and just posing the question. Just put it in there. If you see the shutters roll down, yeah, don't bother. All right, they're already that's at 30%. But if they're willing to engage you, that's that 40% that we need to bring on board. All right, so engage with them. We will get through this, but to steal Ricardo Bosse's statement, we've got to do it with truth, honour, and without violence. All right.
Thank you, Lee. We've got a couple of questions that have come through for Dr. McMahon, and I know that your time is quite limited, so we might cut to those questions first, if that's okay, and then we can come back before Dr. McMahon has to leave. So there's three questions that I've got here that have been submitted. So, Dr. McMahon, Jacinta Price is a divisive figure and stands for an important but united issue, Indigenous violence. Will you consider standing as an independent at the next election? And if you do stand, will you stand on a diverse platform, including stopping the mandates and opening borders?
Well, that's an interesting question. Look, you know, I won't comment about Jacinta. You know, if anyone has an issue with her, I would urge you to take that up with the CLP. That is their decision, not mine. Would I consider running as an independent? It's not something I had ever given any thought to. I can tell you that there are several, some quite large parties chasing my signature, which I have so far resisted the urge. I think I do stand on a very diverse platform, and everyone may not agree with the things I stand up for. I mean, I stand for no mandates, I stand for the oil and gas industry, I stand for the cattle industry, you know, I stand for business. There's a whole pile of things that I will advocate for. So I do think I am extremely diverse and very territory focused. I will always stand up for something that is good for the territory, that is good for economic development, that is good for territory business. As for my future, I am as yet undecided.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, the second question is, can you, Senator, please provide us with any suggestions that would help overturn these mandates on a local level? Is there something specific we can do? Is there something more we can do? Is there anything we may not have considered yet that we should try?
I think everything you've done so far has been fantastic. I would keep the pressure on. That's what I would say, is just keep the pressure on. Be measured and reasonable in what you say. Provide cohesive arguments. Use the media as much as possible, but not by being ranting, raving idiots like Michael Gunner. You know, use them. Also, continue to lobby your politicians. And just sending endless emails is not a good way to lobby effectively. Try and actually get meetings. Try and go through their offices. And persistence does pay off. If you ring every couple of days for a few weeks, we do get sick of it, and we do eventually go, this person must actually be fed income. They must really, really want to have their say. All right, bloody hell, give them an appointment so they stop ringing me. So it does pay off. Get in there and lobby your politicians, both your local MLAs and your federal politicians as well. So just keep up the pressure, keep up the lobbying, keep up the positive media presence, and keep recruiting people to your cause.
Thank you. And now the last question that I've got here from the audience. Why is the federal government not overriding the NT's mandates? Doesn't the Commonwealth have the power to overturn the NT government, as we are not a state?
The Commonwealth does. It doesn't have the power to intervene in the state laws because we're a territory. Yes, the Commonwealth could come in and overturn our laws. They are reluctant to do so because they did that once 24 years ago, and we've been whinging like hell ever since about, how dare you come in and override us? How dare you come in and impose Canberra's will on the Northern Territory? So given the fact that we've been giving them stick for the last 24 years over doing it, the government is very reluctant to come in and do that again, because the same thing would happen. There'd be those of us that would go, yeah, great, but there'd be a whole pile of people that are currently saying the Feds should come in and take over, that as soon as they did, would go, no, bugger off, we're Territorians, you don't tell us what to do. So that is why they are very reluctant to come in here and overturn the Territory. However bad the government may be, believe me, that is the last thing that the federal government has the appetite to do at this stage. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's the truth.
Thank you for being honest with us. Now, I'll throw a question from my end. What is the perception of the specific laws that Michael Gunner has put in place here as the mandates? They go a lot further than any other state. In the Parliament, what is the perception of the validity or the draconian nature of these laws going so far compared to other states that have enacted other mandates?
Yeah, look, and they're not the most draconian and harsh in Australia. They're probably the harshest in the world. I don't know anywhere in the world that has such laws. So they are seen as overreaching. There is a feeling amongst the National Cabinet to not browbeat the states and territories, to try and bring them along for the ride rather than flogging them with a stick. But as I said earlier, there is a growing group of us, led principally by myself and Matt Canavan, who are trying to get more and more pressure to bear on the states and territories, particularly the Northern Territory, and it is seen as completely nuts. It is definitely perceived as completely nuts. It's a matter of convincing the federal government to bring pressure, and at the moment they're trying to do that diplomatically. There's probably other options rather than just charging in and changing our laws. I mean, the territory government gets 80% or more of its funding from the federal government. We could well look at introducing economic sanctions.
Yes, please.
That's one thing that we've suggested. We could also, and this has been discussed extensively, we could also look at limiting their access to the immunisation register.
Yes.
So at the moment they can access that, they know who's vaccinated, who's not, they know what percentage of vaccinations they are. They're using that as a tool to drive their mandates. We could potentially cut off that access to that register, and that would make it much harder for them. So there are tools that we are looking at, and we have had meetings with the Prime Minister's legal advisors to see what we can do that's legally enforceable that can overturn or at least roll back some of these ridiculous, far overreaching mandates and rules.
Thank you. We've seen that Australia's approach has been very much vaccine only, and there hasn't been much talk on treatments and how to help people when they have COVID or to prepare them for potentially getting COVID. Now with Omicron coming out and being very transmissible, what seems to be the health minister's thinking on treatment options as opposed to focusing purely on vaccination at all costs?
Look, without getting too deep into the medical pros and cons, and I am a veterinary surgeon, so I do have a medical background. In general terms, you are far better preventing a disease than treating it. That's just the fact. You're far better preventing it than you are treating it. Yes, there are treatments, and there are newer treatments coming out almost weekly, so there are going to be more options, but you're still generally better preventing it. There is ways of doing that. Vaccination is one of them. Omicron may be another way. There's early indications that it is highly transmissible, but not very pathogenic. That is, it doesn't seem to create as much of a severe disease as other variants. So it could, and I said it's early days, but it could be if you want, like a natural vaccination. Like back in the old days when you expose kids to measles and things like that. It could be a way that if people get it, they get a little bit sick, they get over it, they get a good immunity. So that's a possibility. It's too early to say yet, but that is a possibility.
Thank you.
And thank you again. I did have to go, and I did go out and make a phone call and said, this is a wonderful audience, and they have some questions they'd like to ask. So sorry, but you're just going to have to wait.
Yeah. We've hit the tomatoes and the rotten lettuces out the back. So, well, I don't know that is there any other questions, ladies, that have come through? No, for Dr. McMahon. Well, on that note, then, if there's no other questions specifically for you, Dr. McMahon, I'd like to again thank you on behalf of everyone here for coming along and for offering your words of comfort and support. Obviously, being a business owner and a local Territorian, you've felt the effects directly as well of these mandates, and it's important for everyone here to know that we are not alone, and that there are logical, reasoned thinkers in our Parliament who are standing up for what's right. So thank you again, and we appreciate you coming along.
Thank you.
So what we'll do now is I'll pass over to Ross to talk about what's being dubbed Operation Crown by the NT Police. So Ross, I'll pass on to you to talk about Operation Crown.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks again to Sam McMahon. She's just left. Thank you. This is just a little bit of information for some of them. Okay, let's see if that works. Might as well. Yep. We've noticed over the last week a few businesses have notified us that they've been called by the police. Of course, in this environment, that has made some people very alarmed. There has been for some time a process within the COVID register where police have been calling you, and if you are a registered business with a COVID check-in app and a registered plan, you're on their records already. So what has been happening this week is it's about a 6-month marker, and Operation Crown is out there using police resources, unfortunately, to ring our businesses, which I think is just a disgusting use of police resources. They are ringing businesses that are already on their register, that have got a registered plan, and they are, so far from what reports we've had, been very polite and have advised that there is a few additional elements potentially that you are required to make note of, and then they are happily sending out an email to the business owner and then allowing the business owner to complete their various forms that they need to do. Simply don't panic, firstly. If you do get that phone call, be nice, courteous, and take the information, the email, look at it properly. You'll find, if you need any additional advice, of course, you could seek some additional legal advice or any of the other legal teams that are around, but you'll find that you'll already have done most things anyway. So it's not a panic station mode. They did ask or make some notes about immunisation status. Please, again, do not panic. Read through it properly, and you'll find they're just asking you to check off their form that you have got your register as you would already have done. So don't panic. And submit it on time, and you'll keep them off your back without any problems. So again, don't panic. If you think you need additional advice, seek that, but just simply calmly go through it. And again, unfortunately, it's absolute waste of police resources, and which is exactly right. That's your tax dollars. But don't panic. Operation Crown is active at the moment, and we thought we should let you know. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ross. So just before we get on to the final round of questions, and there's a few in there for Leith and for other members of the committee up here, I'd just like to talk a little bit about where to from here. So it's been a very tumultuous last few weeks, and what we've been able to achieve to date as a group is frankly incredible. We've been a shining light and an example to people all around the country, and every week we get contacted by people from interstate saying, I've seen what you're doing, it's incredible, can you help us start a similar thing in my area? So that is testament for all of you as business owners standing up and having your voice heard. And we have an incredible example of how powerful even one voice can be. One voice standing up saying, this is wrong, there is a better way. So where to from here? We have lodged our case. The judge today decided that it wouldn't be heard this side of Christmas, and so we'll be working with the legal team to progress that and take that as far as we can. We are in it to win it. We're not here just to ruffle the government's feathers. They made a lot of intimations to us over the last week about whether we'd be willing to drop our case if they, agreed to hear one part of our position early. That's not something that's on the cards for us. So that will progress, and it will progress as quickly as we can manage it. But in the meantime, we have over 500 businesses, and that's growing, that we are looking to continue to provide support. That only happens when you engage with us. So we have multiple forms of communication. Make sure you are on our Facebook page and are liking and sharing all the posts that we put up. It really helps the algorithms. We also have our feedback forms, so you can fill one out tonight and we look at every single one of them. You can send us an email or send us a messenger message. All of these are ways that you can get your thoughts, your ideas through to us to talk about it and think about it. We are a grassroots member-led group. Even though we may be the official committee sitting up here, we don't know everything, and we are here to listen and take on board your ideas and your suggestions. So please make sure you continue to engage. We are coming very close to Christmas and New Year, so we'd be looking at finishing off for the year tonight. The plan was, depending on what was going to happen today in court to have another meeting to update next week, but since the judge has decided that she won't agree to hear the case early, then it's probably prudent that we have a little bit of a break. I know everyone's expended a lot of energy and time to come along and come to these meetings every week. What's happening as well is all the other support things we have in place are going to continue and roll on from now on as well. So none of that is stopping. We have our jobs board. There's work on the go now to try and expand that with a register for people looking for work as well. We get a lot of employees who've lost their jobs who are saying, look, can you put my credentials up? So we have a section for employers to post a job, and that's all free. But now we are working to develop the ability for people to post their credentials up and potential employers to ask them to come in for an interview. Our support group is ongoing with Alan. Our legal circle with Daniel carries on as well. So all of this is still going to continue to happen in the background. Our policy group is continuing as well, where we're looking at what is the future going to look like for us as a group and as a community. What are the ideas that are going to drive our territory forward that are coming out of an incredible group made up of over 500 businesses like yourselves. So we're not standing by thinking, oh, you know, the court case is the be all and end all. There's more to what we're doing here than just that. And the amount of messages of encouragement and support that we're getting from businesses and everyday people is incredible. There's a lot of businesses just like us who, for a variety of reasons, are scared to stick their necks out. They have everything on the line, and they just can't bring themselves to take that step out in public, but they are very, very supportive in the background, and we thank them for that, but also we thank you guys for being the real examples and the leaders in industry here in the territory. So we are continuing. We will announce the next meeting for January in due course. We are carrying on with all of our fundraising efforts because that doesn't end. The court case, as it grows, gets more and more expensive, and so we'll continue with that. And it's been an incredible thing to see so many people donating towards, whether that's with money or with goods to raffle off towards the fight. So we really do appreciate that, and that will continue to occur. Later tonight, like we said, we'll be drawing the first raffle. But what I'll do is just now carry on to some specific questions for Leith to answer, and try not to put him on the spot too much. There's a couple of doozies here, mate. Do you think the NT police force has been politicised? If yes, to what degree has the politicisation of the police force compromised the legitimacy of current show infringements, fines and charges? Do you have any ideas on how to best challenge the infringements and charges? And other than the standard prosecution brief, what other material do you recommend be subpoenaed? Probably like 4 questions in there.
Yeah, interesting. In relation to the politicisation of the police force, right at the beginning, back in March 2020, when all this, when the initial lockdown occurred, and after that, when it all opened up again, the Commissioner came out and said, we're now moving into an education phase. This is not going to be an enforcement phase. This is a health issue, and it needs to be dealt with as a health issue. And if you look at public health issues over the last 30, 40 years or however long, you know, we've had public health education programs in relation to smoking, alcohol, all of those things. But it very, very quickly changed from being an education process to being an enforcement one. And that was one of my very early concerns and red flags, if you like, that something was not right in all of this. And by how the infringements went from being $100 and something up to about 11 or 1200, and then they went to 5,000. You go, what for? If you want someone to come along, and the vast majority of us were more than happy to help flatten the curve. Well, the jolly curve has been flattened to death, and I don't know how much more flat you could get it. But they've persisted in this enforcement process, and for what reason, I don't know. And so, you would have to ask the question, and it seems to me that potentially it is politically motivated, because one of the commissioners interstate said that we're going to come out and enforce these directives because you're not doing, you being the public, not compliant. So it seems to me that yes, it is being used. What was the next part?
I'll reiterate the second part. Do you have any ideas on how to best challenge the infringements and charges? And other than the standard prosecution brief, what other material do you recommend be subpoenaed?
Well, a bloke in Alice Springs who's a pilot who is no longer working, he's asked, because Michael Gunner said in one of his media conferences that he's just received the medical advice, which is supporting the the emergency declaration and the CHO Directive 55. So he's put in 7, he's now on his 8th Freedom of Information application for that medical advice. And it's been knocked back on every single occasion. So either, exactly right, either it doesn't exist or it's so damning that they don't want it to exist. So again, that was another red flag. Where is this medical advice which is directing all of these things? So I would say go to court on your $5,000 fine and say, and subpoena the Chief Health Officer to show us this medical advice.
So the next question is, how is it possible that we are in an NT state of emergency due to COVID, when statistically right now you are twice as likely to die just by staying at the National Centre for Resilience than you actually are of dying from COVID?
I agree with that statement. Look, it again, that has been another of my concerns, is that the Centre for National Resilience, who comes up with these names? Exactly right. Boy, did he get it right. It seems to me that again, the CHO directives are being used in such a manner as to punish people. From what I understand, there's no way on God's green planet I'm going to ED if I come down with a flu. Because if I go there, you know where I'm going. And it's to the Todd facility or to the Centre for National Resilience, and along with anyone else who's a close contact. So I think what it's done is it's actually eroded trust in the our long-held health professional standards, which have been there for donkey's years, and yet they've just been absolutely eroded and destroyed in the last 18 months.
All right, this one's a little bit of a curly one. How can we get Chalker fired? Any suggestions?
I think with the if the majority of police actually, there was meant to be a vote of no confidence in the Commissioner sometime in the last 12 to 18 months, I can't remember. The Anti-Police Association put a squash on that because they said, I won't do anything. But I think that would be a very big step. If the Police Association, Paul McHugh, if you're out there, you wanted to talk to me, then get a vote going about confidence in the Commissioner, and let's just see what the rest of the police force actually believe, because you've read what I've written, presumably, and I stand by every last word that I wrote. He has presided over the greatest drain of experience from this police force that we've ever seen, apart from Palmer, who actually had 4 years of zero recruitment, for which we're still paying for. So when he's happy, he can go to Katherine Police Station and say, how can I get rid of the dead wood in Palmerston Police Station? Well, that's not the sign of a good leader. A leader should be open to hearing alternative opinion, and he's not. I sent him messages multiple times over the years, and particularly in the last 18 months, and on one of them I said, don't you ever ask us to do what Victorian police are doing down there, and that's dragging people out of cars, arresting pregnant people, doing the last charge of the light horse through the market, and shooting people with rubber bullets. Never, unheard of in Australia. And he said, his response to me on SMS was, hold the line. Well, sir, what's that meant to me? And I use sir just purely for the respect of the office that he holds. But, yeah, so I would say first a vote of no confidence, because I think it's there.
Yeah.
This one is more for Daniel. The first question in this is something I think that Dr. McMahon already answered. At what point can the federal government remove the insane gunner and chalker and put us into a caretaker state to protect us? Is this even possible? So we heard from Dr. McMahon earlier about the non-appetite of the federal government to intervene at this stage. But the next question I'll refer to Daniel. How can we get the administrator to dissolve the Legislative Assembly and call a general election? Is this a feasible option? We can't wait 3 more years for a territory election.
So you can try, the Senator McMahon's suggestion was the same as Mr. Nikolakis has already said it many times. We've got to be banging on the doors of the local politicians. You might have to call 5 times, you might have to turn up, you might have to write a letter, but that is what we're supposed to do. And you might get sick of doing it, and they're relying on that. So the same thing with the administrator. If there's 1 or 2 people that call and suggest that, well, that's easy to put to bed. But when 100 people, 500 people do it, then it's going to make her think twice. So I would add in there not just the administrator, but all of the 25 seats of Parliament. It's up to us individually, not just the individuals who are the leaders of United NT Business, but every one of us here tonight, everyone listening, everyone has a local member of Parliament that are there to represent you. So let them know what you think.
Sorry, there's a couple more for you here. So is the COVID-19 vaccine mandatory for children under 16 for them to work at places like McDonald's, KFC, etc., being that the child is under 16 and needs consent from a parent if their parents won't allow them to be vaccinated?
The vaccine applies to workers. Workers are not defined according to age. So if they're working, then they need to have the vaccine with all the other things in mind. As in, you can if you're coming into contact, if you're producing food, distributing food, and so on. So the age isn't the issue. It's if you're working and then coming into contact with vulnerable people. That's the issue.
This one is, what protections as a business owner can I have afforded to me when my business insurance won't cover me if I sack someone who doesn't get the jab? They also won't cover me if a staff member gets the jab and suffers an adverse reaction. We can't enforce medical procedures on staff as we are 100% liable.
None. Sorry, but that's the answer. None.
You're on your own. This next one is for...
Sorry, just for someone who said don't enforce it. You don't have to have your staff vaccinated unless all those other things line up. That is, during the course of their work, they are coming into contact with vulnerable people. Okay, well, we've said this many times, there's a lot of misinformation that gets pushed out that says everyone has to be vaccinated. No, it's if while you're working, you're coming into contact with vulnerable people in the way that vulnerable people are described in the CHO 55. So basically that's children under 12, Aboriginal people, all Aboriginal people, and the other categories are basically people with a particular illness that makes sense. You know, chronic kidney, heart, liver, lung disease, and so on. But the other big categories are all children under 12 and all Aboriginal people. We all know that the CHO Directive 55 is targeted at workers while they're working in their workplace because the government's trying to hit your hip pocket to influence your decisions. Simple as that.
Thanks, Daniel. This next one is for Leith. Do you think trust in the NT Police has been eroded as a result of COVID directions and the heavy-handedness applied at some rallies?
Absolutely. That formed part of my email directive to the Commissioner. I was also, I advised him earlier on in the year, or maybe late last year, that these heavy-handed tactics which are being seen around the country will do nothing but erode trust in the police force, which has been hammered in the last, particularly this year. You know, it's really been hammered. And for my efforts, I was counselled by an Assistant Commissioner and told to have no further contact with the Commissioner. Whereas on every other occasion, he replied to me or contacted me either in person, by phone, by text or by email. On that occasion it came down the chain of command through the deputy to the ASCOM. I got dragged in off the road. I was working shift sergeant and counselled in relation to the email that I'd sent him because I said, "Sir, I think you need to be better informed," and gave him a few links to different areas. And I said, yes. The simple answer is yes, it's been eroded. Just before, in case there's no other questions for me, I just want to encourage you that part of the way that you're going to get through it is by creating community. What you've done here is community, right? Being involved with each other. Like before this, maybe some of you knew each other, but I dare say a fair number of you wouldn't have known each other. Now you've connected. So when things get worse, and they possibly will get worse, actually they probably will get worse, you have a community with which to rely upon, that you can work with, you can support each other, and that is what will get you through this, all right? It's not the government. The government is not the be-all and end-all, and that's been a problem for the last 10 years, that people think the government's going to save it all. And that's what's got us into this mess now. But there's a group of businessmen, similar businesses united in Cairns, and they've written an open letter to the Cairns Police. And I would encourage this group to do the same to the Northern Territory Police as a whole. sent out an open letter, and I'll just read it very briefly. Dear brothers and sisters in blue, the past 2 years have been extremely difficult for many families and businesses in Cairns, in Darwin, in the Northern Territory. On Friday the 17th, which is their emergency, under emergency powers, the Queensland Government's requesting that you enforce COVID compliance on businesses and citizens based on private medical information and individual personal human rights. The past 3 months have seen thousands of Cairns citizens marching against the proposed mandates, which create segregation and discrimination in this community. The community does not want to be divided, and it doesn't. The community does not want to be divided. We ask that during this festive season you exercise your discretionary powers, some empathy, have some Christmas spirit, and allow our families and businesses to be together. Thank you for your service and Merry Christmas, and signed by the United Business Group there. And I would suggest that that's one way of reaching out to the police, because from what I understand, the vast majority don't want to. The problem is we've got a huge probationary group. In the next year or two, it's going to be hit 60 to 70% of the police force will be probationary. And that is because of the drain of experience which has been going, and it's the experienced members who will stand up and say, no, this is wrong. And so the problem is, while you're in the job, that email that I sent was a clear breach of every general order and whatever. So they had me anyway. I knew as soon as I hit send I was gone. That was the end of my job. But now I'm no longer in the police force. I can speak out. And so I'm telling you, maintain your community, build your community, make it bigger, and you will get through this. It's the community, it's the people, it's the spirit of all you people that the government is not counting on. They think we're all going to be sheep and comply. But it's you people that are standing up and saying, no, enough is enough. And when you start getting, when we get the majority on board, it's done. It's finished.
Just another quick question here about what I obviously had to say before about the police phoning up those businesses with COVID plans. Please take that I don't know the full and accurate answer, but I'm going to give you the best I can. If you already have a COVID plan, you'll probably have a COVID register number or similar. But if you go online to their NT government's COVID-19 site, the current checklist will be there. That is the checklist that they will be emailing out anyway. So if you go into that, you can download it, print it, screw it up, throw it against the wall, whatever you have to do. But go through that checklist. Obviously keep your own office copy, and then you can resubmit that form in advance if you think that's what you wish to do. If you wish to speak to the police officer, have a nice chat with them, that's fine. Because unfortunately, they're not necessarily enjoying their job either. But please be courteous. So far the advice has been that they have been nice people, but they may not have known what they were necessarily talking about. But get online, download the form, and you should be able to then update that. It should be every 6 months. So I've been told one of those phone calls happened about a week and a half, 2 weeks out from when that 6 month marker was. So have a look, keep an eye on what your monthly or 6 monthly checker is, so you don't fall foul of those guys. But I think you can go online and update.
Just leading on from that, an authorised officer includes a police officer in uniform. So a plainclothes police officer is not an authorised officer for the CHO directives. All right. That is why when I was in CIB, they told us whenever we went out to do any compliance that we had to do it in uniform, because under the Public and Environmental Health Act, it's very clear that it is a police officer in uniform. And when someone comes and asks you to do something pursuant to the CHO directive, they, as an authorised officer, must have an identity card identifying them as an authorised officer, unless they're a police officer in uniform. And until you have every right to ask for that ID, to see that ID. If they cannot produce it, they cannot get you to do one iota lawfully. All right?
Does that apply as a security officer?
No, this is under the Northern Territory Public and Environmental Health Act, an authorised officer.
But to ask for medical records, doesn't it have to be a fire security officer?
That is a good question, but I don't believe so. And that's the greyness in this.
Certainly seek some advice otherwise, but unfortunately, if we were to look at and comply with what's written, no, you're not right there. And it is an authorised officer or a police officer in uniform under the CHO directives and it is fundamentally under the CHO directive. So, unfortunately, there is grey area, but we would have to take that to court and challenge that grey area. So if you were to look at what we've been presented with, unfortunately follow that.
That was part of my arguments as well with the association. They got a legal advice on the police officers that were having to comply and be stood down. And when I read that legal advice from one of the legal firms that the NTPA have, it made no mention of any correlation or with the Biosecurity Act. And the Biosecurity Act talks about orders upon an individual. There has been some talk about amending the Biosecurity Act to include groups of people.
Groups of people doesn't mean the whole of Australia, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but we're not up. Yeah, they're not operating under that.
Lucky last question for you, Leith. What are your plans for the next chapter in your life, and will you consider standing as a candidate for one of the freedom-loving parties?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm fortunate that my wife is still working. I'm fortunate that at this stage she hasn't been targeted because of my stance. Knowing how the machinery works, that is a concern of mine and ours, that they may come after her, but who knows, we'll cross that bridge when we do. I dislike the idea of going into politics immensely, but as I've said to young fellas about moving from from uniform into CIB, never say never. I always said I'd never go into CIB. Can't on busy, but I ended up spending 17 years there. So never say never. My father grew us up with a love of history and to look at politics, because that is part of history. And we need to know, history is so important. We need to know our history, because if we don't know our history, we are destined to repeat it. And unfortunately, that's where we're racing to at a great rate of knots. But yeah, never say never. I certainly wouldn't be sticking my hand up for any of the mainstream parties. No.
Australia won.
I like Ricardo, basically.
Okay, just before we move on to end the night, so it is coming, I'd like to take this quick opportunity to say, firstly, Leith and I joined the Northern Territory Police Force 24 years ago together. So we've known each other for a while, and it has been a very proud time to have Leith stand with us here tonight. And I would simply like to put out my hand and say thank you to Leith, and I ask that we all quietly stand and give him a round of applause. So thank you, Leith.
Thank you, Leith. I'll get you to stay standing, because what we'll do now, we'll just draw the raffle that we have. So I'll get Leith to pull out the lucky number, if that's all right. Yeah, with our wonderful box, Mainstream Media Agents for Deceit. So this is Orange F97 Panda Lelekis. Redraw, okay, we'll redraw.
Thanks, Panda.
Hold on, Panda.
Orange F44, Jane. There's a number here, so we'll call them as well, make sure it's the right Jane. So thank you, Lee. So on that note, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to Leith again and to Senator McMahon for coming along. We'll take this opportunity to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a fantastic New Year. The fight is on. You're not alone. We're in this together, and we'll announce our next meeting and come back in the new year bigger and better and stronger. So thank you very much. Last thing I'll do is I'll just ask you all to stop by and see the ladies. Christy has kindly donated a $300 photography and makeup voucher, and has also got some discount vouchers to hand out for any of your VIP customers. So feel free to take some of those from the front, so you can hand out to your special customers in your business. They get a wonderful discount from Christy. So thank you again. And have a great night, a great Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.
Hi guys, well thanks for attending the live. Really informative tonight. And lead to both Senator McMahon. Things are progressing as much as we've had a little bit of a setback, and I guess in one sense it's probably to be expected. The government, with their position on things, are pretty strong against it, so no doubt they'll be fighting hard as well. But things are moving. I think we'll keep promoted. United NT Businesses has got a lot going on. It's formed in such a short space of time through frustration of business owners and what's been happening with mandates, and I think it's really shown. Week on week we've had the same numbers, close to 400 to 500 coming here, getting information, supporting each other. There's a real community network, and as Lee said, it's really now about community supporting each other and getting those that are on the fence, 40% that are out there on the fence, getting those to move on and start to think differently. So the point raised there about asking, when people ask the questions, it's just go back to the why and get them to try and think a bit more logically and think differently on it, rather than just listening to the mainstream media and what's happening there. So anyway, we'll finish up there, guys. Honestly, another great night tonight. Thanks for your support, everyone. It's without you guys, United NT Businesses wouldn't be where it's at. And I think there's a passion that we're all got is supporting business, but it's not just supporting the business, it's supporting jobs. There's so many of us as staff have been put in an awkward position where they're not able to do the role they've got to do, and so many have had to be put off, not because business members want to put them off, but the business owners put them off, but because they've been forced to, and that's just so wrong. So anyway, we'll leave that up there. To the people in Catherine, the owners in Catherine and Alice Springs, please keep in touch with us. We're trying to keep communication happening out there as much as we can. Getting a little bit of exposure there, but yeah, so the guys in Catherine and Alice Springs, keep in touch with us. We're trying to get as much out there as we can, these lives now. Hopefully you get a good bit or good exposure what's going on here, and that's about it for me. So look, guys, we'll leave it to it, and keep up the fight. Keep talking to people out there. There's no doubt things are changing. There's movement happening in so many different areas, and there's a lot of pushback happening. You've only got to see the rallies in the other states and numbers. Melbourne at 750,000, they reckon 800,000. Sydney had a great run last week. The Gold Coast, the border, Queensland border had a huge one as well. It's just happening right across the board. People aren't giving up on this, and it's actually getting more and more momentum. It's just the mainstream media aren't exposing it, and we all know that's the case. And it's time for us to expose it. Get it out there and share that. Share this. Share this live as well. Get this out there and share it with everyone that you've got that you know that may want to see it, or that are on the fence, so you can start to look at things in a critical thought process. So anyway, guys, thanks again for your support. Share this around, get it out there. Really get that information out. Keep strong, hold the line. There's support there. Reach out to us, guys, if you want support. I know the emails are getting monitored. We're not always super quick to get back to you, but be aware that they're not being ignored. So we've now got a couple of wonderful ladies that joined on the committee to start monitoring that and really get things underway. As we said, we're only 8 weeks old, and we've got over 500 members. There's a real community growing, and just remember, you're not on your own. Definitely not on your own, and the support mechanisms are through the group, through the business owners, and not just through United NT Business. There's other groups out there as well which are against the mandates, and they're all forming in larger numbers and really supporting each other as well. So I'll leave that there. Have a wonderful Christmas. Have a good break. Keep strong. Keep positive. Things are changing, and we'll see you later. Thanks again.